Before starting the actual video, I would like to reassure you that you don't have to know anything about Yu-Gi-Oh to be able to enjoy this video. My usual viewers can just view this as me talking about the unfortunate life of a natural scientist in an extra nerdy way. With that out of the way, let's jump into the content. So, last month, or maybe the month before that, a TCG World Premiere Yu-Gi-Oh! Archetype was teased. The theme is dinosaurs and scientists, and I was so excited for it. If you didn't know me, I am a zoologist, but I did some paleontology research before. I have been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! On and off since like the last decade or so, and I am an official Konami judge. That's why I care about Yu-Gi-Oh! But anyway, this archetype, GMX, was finally revealed at around maybe a week ago or longer by the time this video will be up. When I finished reading the cards, I stared at my screen and I was like, this is absolutely. So I stopped thinking about it and just moved on with my day. As time goes by, I read and listened to people's opinion on it. And the more I think about it, the more I think that, funnily enough, this archetype encapsulates the life of a present-day natural scientist. Let me elaborate. The identity of GMX is excavating your deck until you find a GMX and or a dinosaur. Then you do something. Of course, this is a neat gimmick that symbolizes fossil excavation. Pretty sure most people would get that. But what's an even better touch is, you take 400 damage each time you do. And that is the first point that I want to talk about. Every single research is not guaranteed to succeed. In most cases, you need to do some trials and errors several times until you finally succeed. If you finally succeed, that is. Each time you perform an experiment, you need to spend resources. No matter who you are or what you are, your resources are limited. At the bare minimum, you need to spend times. You age as you perform those experiments, and that means you are getting closer to death. I'm not being grim, that's just how it is. Not only that though, most of the time, other resources need to be spent. The most obvious example would be money. The amount that you need to spend depends on your research, of course. But even the cheapest experiment will still leave a significant impact if you fail multiple times. And most of the time, at least in natural science, you will fail multiple times. Oh, and while we're talking about costs, I want to address something. You know how some of the scientific articles are paywalled? Most of the time, it's not because the scientists are stingy. It's because making your article open access is actually more expensive, for the scientists that is. The authors themselves need to pay more money, and when you already spend a lot for your research, it really adds up. Anyway, in Yu-Gi-Oh!, you start with 8,000 life points. If you fail to excavate the appropriate card within the top 20, you lose. Same with real-life natural science. If you fail multiple times, you will run out of resources, and going bankrupt will ruin your life. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I've seen some people drop out of academic life because their experiment failed multiple times. And some of you might think, just don't fail them out, be better. Which is, fair enough, you can increase your success rate if you are better, if you do everything perfectly. But that's not how it goes in natural science. We couldn't completely control everything that is happening in nature. There will always be X factors that could cause failure. And sometimes you wouldn't even know what that X factor is, even after you finally succeed. That's also the case with excavating cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because the deck is shuffled. Unless you are cheating, of course, but that's another problem in itself. In the case of GMX, you could theoretically increase the success rate if there are more dinosaur-type main deck GMX, but there simply isn't. Literally, not a single GMX main deck monster is a dinosaur. Danin mentioned GMX, but is not a GMX monster itself. And again, that's just how it is in real life. Most of the time, it is so difficult to find that one specific scientist in that specific field you are looking for. Those who are not familiar with zoology and paleontology might not be able to grasp how specific a zoologist field could be. If you want a little bit of exercise, just try to name as many animals as you can. Maybe picture it inside your head, or perhaps write it down. Then look at your answer. Each of those names you imagine or write could potentially be a lifetime topic of a zoologist's research. Each one of those, and I'm not even kidding. Even if you write down a specific subspecies of an animal, a certain zoologist can specifically dedicate their life to the research on it, and only it. And what that means is, at any periods of time, there are many animals that don't have any researchers specialized in them. Most of the time, simply because no one is interested enough. And that means, if you are specifically interested in those animals, then there is not a single person who you can optimally, scientifically discuss about those with. Well, not at a deep enough level at least. If we're talking about surface level, then it's fine. If it's just a random question from the general public, usually your friendly neighborhood zoologist could answer that. But if we're talking about research, that could be difficult. I can say this because it happened to me. When I was a student, both undergraduate and master degree, none of my direct academic supervisor are a deer researcher. In fact, they literally haven't done any research on deer before. But they did the kind of research that I want to do, just two different groups of animals. That actually matters a lot in zoology, because their forms are so different, their DNA sequences are so different, their ecologies are so different, etc. Even if the general concept of the methodology is basically the same, you need to do some tweaking. And so, I either had to choose someone who is familiar with deer but haven't done any kind of research that I want to do, or the opposite. Nothing is optimal, so you just have to choose from what's available. That's my point. More often than not, if you are a natural scientist, no one is interested in doing exactly what you want to do. And I feel like that's also the case for GMX. No other archetype perfectly synergizes with it. This is like the first actual Dino-fusion archetype. Okay, technically Dinomorphia is a Dino-fusion archetype, but they play so differently. Transcendosaur also have fusion, but, well, honestly it kind of feels like if Dino wants to be DDD, but a lot worse. Shadow Dino was a thing, but not exactly an archetype, and Dino Wrestler do have a fusion, but not exactly a fusion archetype. But anyway, this and the fact that there are not enough GMX cards makes them difficult to build optimally, if you want to stay on theme at least. But hey, new things are somewhat exciting, right? Excavating cards and paying 400 every time you do? It is fun. But what exactly is the payoff? Well, in Archetype, most likely just a pop and some heals. Just to make it clear for those who don't play Yu-Gi-Oh!, it basically is pretty mediocre, perhaps even lackluster. And again, that reminds me of the life as a natural scientist. The results of natural science research are filled with what the public would consider mediocre. Why? Because most are curiosity driven, not goal driven. We just do what we want to do basically. I feel like this is exceptionally relatable for me because my field is animal systematic. We classify animals, we find out how to identify animals, we find out their evolutionary relationship, and while doing so, sometimes we discovered a new species, which almost always produce a decent response from the public. A lot of people think discovering a new species is cool, which is fair of course, but that's basically it though. A new species is not exactly a new thing. The animals have always been there. We barely change anything by revealing the fact that it is a new species. Sometimes we revealed something groundbreaking, a feat that we haven't heard before, something we didn't know is possible in real life. And that is exceptionally cool for us. Most of the time, it's just a thought-provoking discovery for most people though. It doesn't directly affect people's life. Honestly, sometimes it doesn't affect anything. Not until years later, centuries perhaps, when someone discovers something on top of your research. And by that time, you wouldn't even be alive. Still, sometimes we discovered a certain endangered species that lives in a specific area. And that is an important discovery for conservation. In a sense, it is an impactful result. But I'm just gonna be real. The result would probably get negated by the because they want to turn the area into whatever project it is. Or they could simply be unaffected by your research because, well, you are just a powerless scientist after all. It is what it is. Because our results usually don't directly affect humanity, most of the time, people don't put much worth to our research. That's why natural scientists don't make a lot of money. But that's actually not the worst part of this reality. The worst part is, because these kinds of research are not deemed that important, it is so difficult to get funding. Think of it like this, right? A person comes in for an interview. They say they want to look for a deer species that haven't been observed in over 20 years. That's why they need these fundings for their expedition. Then you, someone from the funding agency asks, "Are you sure you will find this deer? I mean, it hasn't been observed in over 20 years, right?" And then they say, "Well, of course not. It's an expedition after all, and not 33. And you were like, Okay, sure. And then another person comes in for an interview and says they need fundings for their research because they figure out this extract from this specific plant have the potential to cure cancer. Now, without any bias, which person would receive the funding? Surely not the dear guy, right? Unfortunate for us, but understandable, of course. Because resources are limited, there is always an opportunity cost for everything. And for GMX, the question is, why would you even play this over some better archetypes? You might think it's cool, it's fun, it's new, so you want to try it. Whatever your reason is, understandable. For real, I am also that kind of dualist. Everything is fine if you just want to have fun. But if the stake is high and you are actually trying to win the whole thing, would you play these cards? Pure. Pretty sure the answer is no, which is unfortunate, but of course understandable. Now you could just say, well, just play casually. No need to put yourself in a high stake position. And that would be fair enough for Yu-Gi-Oh! You couldn't exactly do that in your life though. What even is the casual, non-competitive side of a life? Secluding yourself and just survive with natural resources? In that case, you are competing with the animals, competing with nature, which might even be harder for a lot of people honestly. So yes, understandably, a lot of people just couldn't take the risk. To walk the path of a natural scientist, the opportunity cost is just too high. And that's why, unfortunately, many friends of mine who were once prospective scientists are now mostly on a different career path because it's easier for their life. Right now, the only viable way to play GMX is probably by splashing it to another better deck. Legit, the first combo video that I see of GMX is searching Habakiri. Several hours later, I see it doing that and making Kapsuyami Way. Brother, why? To put it in a zoology term, it's like if you advertise yourself as an upcoming entomologist, then you got hired just to look for crickets to feed some geckos. Imagine how that feels. Sure, you could be useful, quite impactful perhaps, but it just doesn't feel good, you know? Another way to make it viable is to simply give them a good support in Blazing Dominion. This is basically like waiting for that opportunity out of nowhere. Maybe a funding specifically tailored for your research, which could always happen, you know. We never know. It's just not reliable. It might never come, but it is what it is. Another thing which is even funnier for me, I tuned into Joshua Smith's stream where he talked about GMX for like, I don't know, maybe about 1 hour? Maybe more? And it was so funny how that 1 hour boils down to one word: potential. What's funny for me is the fact that some people do appreciate GMX. Some people have hopes that it could be good in the future. And that is literally what's been happening in the academic life, or at least my own POV. I have several juniors that I think have a lot of potential. Like, a lot. I have a lot of hopes for them, a lot more than I do for GMX, by the way, just saying. I'm pretty sure they would be a good zoologist or paleontologist, but they just couldn't find their way, mostly gatekept by resources. Can't get fundings because what they want to do is not deemed worthy enough. I've taught several generations of undergraduate students, and same sentiments occurs. Some of them are promising, yet simply couldn't find their way because of the same reason. But also other personal circumstances on top of that, of course. What's kind of frustrating is the fact that I cannot do anything, because I am also struggling for life. I cannot give them the resources that they need. And not just me. Many of the quote unquote established zoologists and paleontologists are also still struggling for life. Because it's just not the job that makes a lot of money. You get some, but you also spend a lot of money for your research after all. As an academic, all we can do is take some students that are interested in our research, guiding them as best as we could, hope they learn enough, and hope the best for them in the future. Hoping that those potential men and women could unleash their potential. On the other side though, like I said at the beginning of this video, when I first saw GMX, I thought they are absolutely unplayable. But they are not. Not literally at least. You could play with them. And when I think about it, that's what's been happening in this world too. No matter how promising you or your research are fundamentally, no matter how much potential you have, no matter how much achievement you might even have, at the end of the day, if the people that matters cannot comprehend that, then the door is locked. It doesn't matter how important your research would be for conservations, etc. If the funding agency disagree or simply cannot comprehend that, then you're not getting that research funding. That's just how it is. Last thing I want to say, and this might sound weird, but to those of you who say GMX have potential, to those of you who pick up GMX and mess around with it, thank you. I'm gonna do it too. Well, whenever it arrives in the OCG, that is. By that time, the support would have already arrived, so it could be better than it is currently. Could be. Who knows? Anyway, enjoy your day.